For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lindsay Fawcett. This is my first year in Minneapolis, but it is my 5th year teaching, and I was asked to present on what I've been doing in my classroom, Blogster and digital storytelling, using new literacies in the classroom. Now, the who is the important piece here. In my classroom, I mainly work with 5th and 7th grade students in a co-teaching model. I do a literacy block with the 5th graders, and I co-teach in 2 of the 3 core classes of English Language Arts with the ELL students and mainstream students. Ironically enough, the ELL students are some of the higher students in the classes. And the where is also very important. I work at Olson. We work in the computer lab. We work in the classroom, and lots of my students have taken what we do in the classroom home with them. I've even had times where I've taught some students things like working with something called Toonduke, online comic strips. We don't do it in the classroom, but I taught one of my students who I knew who had internet at home, who loves making comic strips, how to do this, and he's making them on his own time. So even just 15 minutes of introducing a topic to a student and knowing that they can bring it home is a great opportunity for them. The what is really important. Working with technology in the classroom isn't what's most important. It's teaching students how to access that technology and how to use the state standards through the new literacies that you teach with. It's not about teaching them a skill on the internet. I mean, I think I just had yesterday, I had a student say, well, Ms. Fawcett, why aren't we using Blogsters anymore? Isn't that why you were teaching us this? And I said, no. What did you have to do with your blog? You had to be creative, you had to create a mood, you had to think about what poem you were writing, how did that relate back to the reading you were reading about. You had to think about it from another person's point of view. So there were a lot of critical thinking skills that were incorporated into creating this blog for them. It wasn't about the technology. So I have been doing 2 things. In 5th grade right now, we're doing a digital storytelling, and I have this really great website, ilearntechnology.com, that you can go on and find a lot of different ways to do digital storytelling. If you look, I have a handout for you of every website that I'll be talking about today or might have for you. Not only do I have this handout here, you'll notice at the bottom is my website. All of them are also on my website, which you can access. I'll show you how to access it later from the NetWiki. And then Blogsters I did with my 7th graders, and we just finished. I will have some examples to show you later, and later on you're also going to get the opportunity to create some blogs yourself. Keywords such as save as, upload, Creative Commons, citing, saving versus publishing, double click, and theme are words that we take for granted, but our students don't know what they are or how to use them. These are words that when I first started teaching about blogs, I didn't even think about the fact that my students wouldn't know how to save as or do a double click. We need to teach these things along with teaching the different ideas to use on the internet. A lot of people ask why. Why is this important? If our students can't read and write with a pen and paper, why do we need to teach them how to be able to do it on the internet? First of all, creating a story with a pen and paper is just not enough. This is not the day and age that we live in. And students need to learn how to create, share, and publish online. But not just do that, they need to learn how to do it responsibly. And if we don't teach them how to do that in the classroom and how to be safe about it, where are they going to learn it? A lot of our students don't get that opportunities. When students create digital stories, they are not only working on their ability to write a story, but to create a mood and an atmosphere for that story, which is something that is not an easy thing to learn how to do. You'll notice as I pass out the blogs later that some students captured their mood of their story a lot better than others did. The how. A lot of teachers say, I can't do this. There's testing all the time in the computer lab. This is not true. And I, for the last 3 years, have been taking note of when the computer labs truly are filled. A lot of other times they just sit there empty. October to January, which is kind of past, they're pretty empty. And May to June, after all the testing's done, they're also empty. Working with technology in the computer lab isn't just about working with the technology. There are weeks or days that lead up to it. So when the computer labs are filled and you don't have access to them, you're leading up to it with the students. And then you have the opportunity for them to use the computer lab responsibly. It's not just about accessing the lab. But these are times that I would look at for, end of this year or the beginning of next year, where there are times where truly they are pretty empty, right after map testing is over. When you're teaching students this, you need to give them a rationale. Why are you teaching them this? What is the big deal? Why is this important? They want to understand this. Also, you need to give them rubrics. I also give you an example. This is the exact rubric that I gave my students. If you note on your green piece of paper, there is a website for creating rubrics. That's where I got this from. I can tweak it and I can even save it. Being a member on there is free. This is what my students had to do for their Glogster. I showed them this. I went over it with them. We looked at the example that I made. We looked over what was wrong with mine, what was good with mine. And then at the end, they had to do a self-evaluation. And I have not yet, but they just handed them yesterday. So I'm going to have to do a final evaluation for them. So they have had a process and had an opportunity to see what is the expectation. And I didn't have to spend hours upon hours creating this rubric. I created the time management one and the sources. Those are the only two I created. The rest of them, I just tweaked off of whatever came off of RubyStar. Highly recommend using rubrics. You must also have an example. Anytime you create something and you're showing students how to create it, they need to see what it looks like. If this is something they've never done before, they need to see, well, what is your expectation? I understand that you have this rubric, Ms. Fawcett, but what do I do with this rubric? How do I visualize that? And a lot of times with creating the example, I have them, checklist. A lot of times with creating the example, I have them do it with me in class. Now, if you notice on my Glogster, I have a Glogster info sheet. And on the back of this, they have a checklist. Everything that needs to be on their Glog. They need their name, their poem title. They need to cite pictures. They need to comment. They have a lot of things they need to do on this checklist. And if they don't have this checklist, then my 7th graders will just forget. I mean, out of 90 students, we only have 3 students, which in my opinion is 3 too many, who forgot to put their names on it. But when they have the checklist, they have more of an opportunity to be successful. And then doing a sample together. When I teach blogs or when I teach any type of thing online, before they can even touch their story or their poem, which is what we did with the blogs, we do one together, which is what we'll be doing today in our class time. You guys will be learning the different skills of using a Glog. Some of you might pick it up faster than others, but you'll be learning how to use the Glog, so then when you go to teach it to your kids, if you so desire, you'll understand how to use it. And I have students in my class, and I'm sure you do, who know a lot more about technology than you do. And the second they pick it up, you just need to tell them the website, and they will understand exactly what you're talking about. Use those students. They may finish their project in literally half the time of other students. And then you have 5 other teachers in the room. The big thing, though, with teaching kids is I have to sometimes walk around and be like, you're not supposed to be touching their mouse or their keyboard. You need to use your words. Because if they do it for their classmates, then their classmates aren't learning. But the students who are more proficient, they need to learn how to use their words to teach to one another. And they're always more than willing to be helpful. Another important thing is you have to teach safety and security first. At the beginning of the year, I have an introduction to who I am as a teacher, my blog for my students. I also have on that note to the parents that the parents have to sign saying, my child can go on the internet and do internet activities with your class. If they use it inappropriately, you have the right to remove them from the internet. Then what you have to do is go over with your kids. This does not have to be done in a computer lab. You just need one computer, your screen, to teach them the importance of safety on the internet. Why is it important? I know most of my students don't understand that fact. They just, publishing is publishing. Putting it out there is putting it out there, but those words are permanent sometimes. And they need to understand why they need to be safe and secure on the internet. It's not just a place to fool around. And my Glogster info sheet. This front page, I taught my students. As soon as I noticed that they were having trouble with the save as, amongst other things, I wrote down a Glogster info sheet for them. Creative Commons, which I also have on the website, is a really cool license. What it does is, so many teachers over the years, because Google has just given us so many opportunities for using images, and it's illegal if we use and publish with those images. But what Creative Commons has done is it creates this license that says for educational purposes we may reuse them. Some are given licenses that say you can reuse, some are given licenses that say you can reuse and edit them. On Google, which I will show you later, you have the ability to go and modify this, where students can access and change to say only search images that I can reuse, which makes publishing any of those images online, as long as they cite back to the source, legal. And teaching them that type of knowledge is important too. I remember when I was teaching this to my kids, they went to a website and they're like, Miss Fawcett, this says it's copyrighted. I can't use this. And I said, read the next line. It says, but available for reuse as long as you cite it. So they really understand and get that fact. It's difficult when they're so used to just searching Google and just searching images to have to remember the next step. And some kids, you know, when they realize the next step, they go, but the picture I wanted is not here. And I said, so then you're not allowed to use it. They don't really like that all the time, but they understand why. I also have an example of a storyboard. I'm going to go through each of these things a little bit more in depth. But this storyboard is what I used with my 5th grade. It is the last thing, or the second to last thing that I'm doing with my students before we write our digital stories online. And it's very important for you to admit to not knowing everything. I have some students who will say, Miss Fawcett, what's this? And I look at them and I say, I have no idea. If you figure it out, let me know. And they tend to, and then I learn something new. And they love that fact. They love that they could teach me something and that I'm open to learning from them. So this is just my presentation. Before I get into the details and the nitty-gritty of the GLOGs and the digital storytelling, does anybody have any questions?